Welcome to the Heartbreak to Happiness show with Sarah Davison. If you're struggling with a breakup and you feel shocked, angry, betrayed, devastated, or sad and alone, then this podcast is for you. Best-selling author and award-winning host Sarah Davison shares how you too can get on with your life to heal, grow, and move from heartbreak to happiness. Here's your host, Sarah Davison.
Welcome back to the show. And today I want to dive into the topic of International Women's Day. Now, this is a day where all women, I believe, should come together, unite, and stand strong to help break the bias, which is the hashtag for the campaign this year, hashtag break the bias against women. Now, there are many biases, as we all know, across all areas of life against women. Now, in my area, the bias that really gets me going, and those of you who listen to my podcast will know this, is the bias in the family court system. Now, this is not just a UK-based challenge. It is something that affects us all over the world. So whether you're in Australia, as my podcast interviews with Dr. Karen Williams have shown, whether you are in the US, as my many different interviews with women from the US talking on this topic, including Tina Swithin, so many talking about the bias that there is. Now, what does bias mean? Well, I looked it up today to see exactly what the official definition of bias is. So I'm going to read you that. Bias is the inclination or prejudice for or against one person or a group of people in a way that is considered to be unfair. Well, in my humble opinion, the fact that in the family courts, the culture is very much that women and children are disbelieved if they are victims of abuse. And it is often presumed that they are overreacting or overly hysterical about something that may or may not have happened. There's also the presumption of contact in family law, which again leads to very, very difficult and even traumatic situations for female victims of abuse and male victims as well. But for this purpose, we are focusing on women because it's International Women's Day. Now, for those of you who know me well, will know that it's not about focusing on the problem. Yes, I work behind the scenes as the patron of the Dash charity and with some phenomenal women leading the way in domestic abuse reform, such as Nicole Jacobs, the domestic abuse commissioner. I've also interviewed for my podcast many empowering strong women like Nicole Sharp-Jeffs from Surviving Economic Abuse, like Rosie Lyon, who again was a survivor of abuse herself, and many more names. Now, the reason I do this is because I strongly believe that in order to break the bias, we need to get educated. We need to shine a light on what is happening in the family court system and what that bias is specifically. Now, there are so many different areas of how that bias can impact you, whether that's going through the family courts, whether it's a lack of education, a lack of training from legal professionals. It blows my mind to this very day that domestic abuse training is not compulsory for all legal professionals. I mean, seriously, what is that about? This is like a core thing that every legal professional is going to come across. And if you don't understand it, if you are not trained to spot the signs, then you are really perpetuating the abuse in the system. So what can we do? Well, we can talk about it, and I think International Women's Day is a day for all women to come together and shine a light on the biases that they see throughout society, because it is time that we break these biases. It is time that by shining a light and educating, by giving more clarity, perhaps to people who don't realize that it's a bias, they don't realize the corruptions in the system, they don't realize that some of their actions, some of the things that they are doing, they are actually perpetuating and making the abuse worse for victims. Now, there are so many different areas we could cover on this, but I think it's important for you, if you are listening to this and you are a survivor of abuse, maybe you're going through it right now, or maybe you've come out the other side and are in recovery from that, It's not about focusing on what it was. It's not about reliving that trauma. It's definitely not, because that will only keep you stuck. I think the important thing here is to learn how to turn that pain of the bias and the trauma that maybe that caused you, and maybe the injustices that were actioned off the back of those biases, but turn that pain into your power, so that the adversity you went through, the tough times when you were at rock bottom because nobody was listening to you, you were being misunderstood, not heard, not listened to, maybe your child or your children were not being heard either, when it seemed like you were the only sane person in the asylum being the family court system at that time, can be completely debilitating. And the Safe Lives report that came out that showed that over 30% of domestic abuse victims going through the family court system were re-traumatized, not by their ex, but by the system, So, it is time to shine a light on this. If we can shine a light, if we can all talk about it in a rational way, as rational as we can be when there's so much pain and emotion linked to it, but being able to shine a light to increase clarity, to educate people who maybe don't understand, who maybe have no idea what is actually happening in the family court system, maybe to share stories, to come together, to stand together, so that we can all take that pain and turn it into the power that drives us every day. Because that's about breaking the bias, but it's also about beating the bias. It's also about coming out the other side so that you are stronger and happier, so that you can use your experience of adversity and injustice to help others to get through that system, hopefully to make some positive changes so that this doesn't keep going on any longer than is absolutely possible. But it's also to come together, to show support for one another, to be empowered. I'm all about female empowerment. I'm all about standing together. Together we are stronger. Together we can make a difference. So if you've been through this, please know that this isn't the end. You can turn this into your power. You can join our community. You can stand strong and learn from this. Ultimately, if you can dig deep and turn the pain that was caused to you by any bias in the system, or any bias across any area of your life, that's where you start to take your control back instead of giving it away. Now, can training change this? Maybe it will shed a light for some people. There are some people where this is a deep-seated belief, deep-rooted. This is something that is never going to shift with a training program. You're never going to be able to make huge transformations. But if we shine a light and we are consistent and we talk about it and we come together to support each other through, we can make a difference. We can make some changes. Okay. And I think this International Women's Day for me is all about increasing the support, increasing the kindness, increasing the opportunities for people to feel their voice is being heard. I guess if you get one takeaway from this today, it's that you can turn your pain into your power. Whatever the trauma that was caused to you by the bias that affected you, whatever that trauma. And I know it seems impossible at times, especially when you're on the floor doing the ugly crying with all the pain that goes associated with the family court process. I know I've been there. But ultimately, know that you can get through this. There is hope. And by turning your pain into your power, by digging deep and using your voice to make a difference, to know that you are not alone. This is not your fault and you are not alone is super important, because turning that trauma into your triumph and becoming stronger and learning the lessons and banking them so that we don't hold on to the resentment for it, but we turn that energy and we channel it into making a difference, speaking out, writing a blog, talking on a podcast, sharing your experience, or maybe just following and supporting the people that are. There are some phenomenal women doing some phenomenal work right now. And a shout out to Rachel Watson, who writes amazing blogs. She's also the author of How to Annihilate a Narcissist in the Family Court, a book that is much, much needed. Also, hashtag The Court Said, their founder, Natalie Page, who's doing amazing work and has a course helping people navigate the difficulties of the court process as a victim of abuse. There are also people like Dr. Charlotte Proudman, who's a barrister, who is out there overturning cases of domestic abuse that were ruled years ago. And she is appealing them and sometimes getting them overturned as well, shining a light on what actually happened behind closed doors, which I think is superbly important. Nicole Jacobs, our current Domestic Abuse Commissioner for England and Wales, who is championing changes and bringing them to the forefront. And she will be appearing, and some of those amazing women will be appearing on the International Abuse Awareness Conference that I'm running this Friday that's coming up. It's in the bio on my Instagram if you want to get the link, Sarah Davison, divorce coach. Go and get your tickets for that if you haven't already. This is something that we can all come together to either support those that are making the changes or maybe start to shine a light for yourself. But no, you're not alone. You are not alone. And turning your pain into your power by recognizing what you've been through, by recognizing that, you know what, you may not be able to change the past. Okay, we can't change what's happened, but we can change how we feel about it. We can dial down some of those negative controlling emotions. We can channel that energy into helping other people. Many of the people that train with me to be coaches, they started off in those positions too, and they've channeled that into their power by now training to become a breakup and divorce coach and help other people. Other people go out there and give back to the community, maybe support a domestic abuse charity. There are so many ways that you can turn the lessons into bank lessons that make you stronger and happier, and also help you to contribute to others who maybe desperately need that support too. So please know today on International Women's Day that this message is key: to stand together, to believe the women that reach out for help, believe them, support them, help them, point them in the right direction, give them that support that they need. And if we all stand together, we can definitely make a massive difference to break the bias. Thanks for listening. That's it for today's episode. I look forward to you joining me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Heartbreak to Happiness. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to win a free ticket to one of Sarah's virtual retreats. The retreats are a transformative combination of live webinars with Sarah herself, coupled with empowering online video programs designed to help you cope better with your breakup and start feeling happy again. For more details, head on over to heartbreakttohappinesspodcast.com, where you can also get a copy of Sarah's free gift. Thank you, and join us again on the next episode for another dose of Heartbreak to Happiness.